Today I'm going to install trailer brake controller on my Jeep Gladiator Ecodiesel. I tow my X-Venture X33 off-road trailer. It came equipped with electric brakes. In order to utilize those brakes, the tow vehicle needs to be equipped with a trailer brake controller to send the signal to the trailer brakes in order to operate them and adjust them to how much force will be applied when you push on the brake pedal of your tow vehicle. I'll be installing the Mopar trailer brake controller on the Gladiator. I've already done it once on this Wrangler Ecodiesel. It should be very similar. I'll show you what the trailer brake controller looks like once it's installed on this Wrangler. There used to be a 12-volt power outlet there, and that gets replaced with the trailer brake controller. That's an adjuster knob that allows you to adjust the force that is applied to the trailer brakes relative to how hard you push on the brake pedal inside the tow vehicle. This is the box that the Mopar trailer brake controller comes in, and that's the part number that works for the Gladiator. It also works for the Wrangler JL. See if I can give you guys a pretty good view of what's inside this box. First thing, you got some instructions. If you've ever worked with instructions from Mopar parts before, you'll find out they aren't very good. That might be the case here. We'll find out by looking at them. Here's a guide. Tells you how to use the brake controller once you get it installed. That's handy to keep inside the Jeep in case you need to know that. The kit's going to have this module in it. That's the actual brake controller. There's a couple places you plug in harnesses into this, and it has the bracket on it that's going to mount it underneath the dash. They give you some zip ties and a couple of nuts. You have a harness. If you already have the factory trailer tow package on your vehicle, all you need is this harness. This is going to be plug and play. That's going to plug into the existing harness. This is going to plug into the module. You got this part that's going to replace that 12-volt electrical outlet. This will be behind the dash, and this will plug into the module. After that, that's going to have to be ran over to the module underneath the dash. These are the parts you're going to see when you look at your dash after the installation is complete. This is going to hold it in to that outlet. You're going to have this part with the numbers on it. That's going to allow you to adjust how much force is applied to the trailer brakes relative to how hard you push on the brake pedal of your vehicle. And this part goes in the center that actuates the brake controller. The first thing we got to do this installation is release these high security Jeep hood latches, because we're going to have to disconnect the battery. First thing we have to do when we're installing the brake controller is disconnect the electrical. So that means there's two batteries. In case you don't know, there's two batteries in your Jeep. There's a stop-start battery, and then there's the main battery. Before you go disconnecting your battery, make sure you haven't opened your doors in a while. There's no dome light, none of the radio or anything, or your ignition is on inside the vehicle. You want to make sure all that's off before you disconnect the battery. So last time I installed one of these, I thought I had disconnected all the power to my Jeep, and I didn't, and my radio hasn't worked the same since. So I'm going to show you how I've learned to disconnect all the power to this Jeep. I'm going to use a 10mm socket, use a 10mm wrench, speed wrench. I'm going to use a 12mm speed wrench, and I'm going to use a 13mm wrench. We're going to disconnect the power to the Jeep by disconnecting the negative side of the battery, because I want to make sure that nothing ends up powering up this Jeep. Then we're going to isolate the ends of these. I disconnected the negative leads from the battery, and I isolated them with this bubble wrap, which kind of looks probably silly, but I'm also going to go here to these body grounds, and I'm going to disconnect these to make sure nothing is possibly grounded anywhere on the vehicle. So hopefully there'll be absolutely no energy going to any systems when I'm working on installing this trailer brake controller. Now I've got these ground leads disconnected from the ground studs here on the body, and this small lead here also disconnected. So now I'm going to isolate these, and if you guys leave me in the comments if you know a better way to isolate these other than using some bubble wrap like I'm doing. Seems a little amateur, but that's what I am. I'm an amateur mechanic. The new brake controller control knob is going to go here, but to get that in there, we're going to have to pop off this and this section. There's a screw under here we got to get at. This is my wife's car, so I want to be kind of careful, not do anything to damage any of this stuff, and I really don't enjoy taking these off, but you got to do it if you want to do this job. There's some connectors back here. I could take these loose and pick this out of the way, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to wire it up and out of the way. Automotive connectors, they only have a certain life. So many times you can plug them and unplug them. So the less you do it, better off you are. So I zip tied this out of the way. I didn't have to disconnect any wires. The other panel that has to be removed is this one. And it'll give us access to feed the wires in. I stopped working on this last night because it got dark. The step that I stopped on was removing this 12-volt power outlet. I don't want to unplug all these plugs. I don't need to save that 12-volt outlet, and I also don't want to damage this dash component either. So I'm going to try to figure a way to get this 12-volt outlet out so I can put the new trailer brake controller dial in here. So I'm going to pretty much just give up on trying to save this outlet. This got to get done for this job to get done. Okay, I finally got that power outlet out. Definitely don't do it the way I did it, but now I'm ready to start installing the trailer brake controller dial right in here. Now that I have the 12-volt outlet out, I can start installing the actual controller on the trailer brake controller. This lead has to go all the way over to the left side of the Jeep, inside the dashboard. So I'm going to start by feeding this through. I already picked out a spot to send this through. Now I can start installing the parts that go in the dash. This small part here goes in first, and these two little prongs are supposed to be at 12 o'clock when you install it. The directions aren't that great. They are what they are. So that's at 12 o'clock. Now the actual dial can go in, and according to the directions, it shows the number 1 is about at top dead center. I don't know if that's going to matter yet, because that will still turn. Now I can install the actual controller part of the brake controller. You can see this small plastic part here, and there's a kind of a groove right here that this fits into. See that right there? So with everything in the right position, this ought to work out. Now that's all locked in. And now this goes in. And according to the instructions, with the dial at the number 1, top dead center, or 12 o'clock, it should look like this when it's done. That's what that looks like inside. So there we go. That's the whole outside part. Turns. Now we can put this dash component back. Just gonna take a look to make sure that when I was moving this around, nothing came loose, nothing got cut or anything. But I'm glad I didn't have to disconnect all these wires. Now we can stuff this dash component back in. I'm gonna go ahead and put this Phillips screw back in, but I'm gonna leave the top part of the dash off for now. That'll be the last thing I put back. Okay, so now it's time for me to get this brake control module mounted. I got my wire from the controller ran over. I found the part of the harness where I plug in, and my connector is right here. The module is going to utilize some of these holes to bolt in. Okay, it's really hard to get underneath here, so I removed the harness for the door, and I removed the bracket that holds the door from swinging out so I could open my door all the way. That'll help me get underneath here, I guess. Before you mount this control module in place, you want to have it all hooked up. So here I've hooked my harness into the connection here that hooks into the tow package harness. I've hooked my harness from there into the module, and then I hooked my lead from the controller into the module here. And now I'm ready to mount this. I couldn't get my head underneath the dashboard to see what was going on down there, but I stuck the camera in, and I threw some tips on here in writing to show you exactly what has to be done. There's a push pin zip tie that's mounted in one of the holes, and that has to be removed because you're going to reuse that hole for mounting one of the all threads on the module. Push pin was very difficult to get out. I used my push pin removal tool and did all the work by feel, basically. I couldn't really see anything that was going on down there. This is some video of the completed installation. Here you see the connection to the tow harness. Look up to the left, you will see a stud-mounted zip tie covering the threads on the upper bolt that holds the module in. Mopar includes that stud-mounted zip tie in the kit. It prevents the threads from cutting through the harness, and it fastens the harness in place. Here's a pretty good view of it right here, and like I said, all this work was done by feel. Well, I've got the whole brake controller installed. I've got all the parts back on the dashboard. Everything's back underneath. All the wires and harnesses are zip tied out of the way so they don't get ruined or get chafed on anything. And now I'm going to try, I got the battery hooked up, and now I'm going to try to start up the Jeep and see what happens. I finished my installation of my trailer brake controller on the Gladiator Ecodiesel. Got my trailer hooked up. Now let's get in and see what the heck this thing's doing inside. Well, it's lit up. That's a good sign. Now let's go for a ride. When you have a trailer hooked up, you'll get a green light. If you take your foot off the brake, it glows green. when you put your foot on the brake, you're going to get a red light. Now I'm going to head out, see how this thing actually operates. This trailer brake controller installation was a complete success. Everything's working just the way it was supposed to. If you found value in the video, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing to the channel. And keep it practical, keep it simple, and keep adventuring. I'll see you on the next one. And don't forget, on Muddy Rutz, the best is yet to come.